Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. The first thing I learned about the outbreak was that winter does not care. It did not care about the emergency alerts stacking on my phone until the battery dropped into the red. It did not care about the sirens in Laramie turning into a constant, directionless noise. It did not care about the frantic voices on the radio talking over each other, or the way the sky went the same pale gray it always does when the wind starts to build over the open plains. Winter showed up on schedule anyway, cold and dry and sharp, rolling down out of the mountains and across Interstate 80 like it had an appointment. My name is Mason Reddick. I was 34 years old when things went sideways, and until that week I was the kind of person you only noticed when the roads were bad. I worked seasonal and contract maintenance for the Wyoming Department of Transportation in District 1, mostly heavy equipment support and shop work. I was not a trooper. I was not a firefighter. I was not anyone's hero. I knew how to keep a diesel engine alive in negative weather, how to bleed air from a fuel system, how to swap a hydraulic hose without soaking the whole bay, and how to read the sky the way you read a road sign. That became enough. The morning it started for me was a Tuesday. It was early, still dark, and the wind had that hollow sound it gets when it's coming from the west. I woke up to my neighbor pounding on my apartment door hard enough to rattle the chain. "Mason," he yelled, "get up, turn the news on." I did not even ask why. The pounding told me why. I pulled on jeans and a hoodie, went to the peephole, saw his face all white and tight, and unlatched the door. His name was Kirk. Oilfield guy, always smelled faintly like diesel and gum. He stood there holding his phone with both hands like it was going to bite him. "They're saying to stay inside," he said. "They're saying it's not just a riot." I stepped into my living room and grabbed the remote. The local station was on. The anchor looked like she had been crying, and the banner at the bottom of the screen kept repeating the same words like, repetition could make them safer. Shelter in place. Avoid contact. Do not approach injured persons. It did not say infected. It did not say dead. It did not say any of the words people use online when they're trying to sound tough. The footage showed an intersection in Cheyenne, then a hospital entrance, then a crowd scattering as something moved through it in a way that made my stomach tighten. The camera jerked away before you could see details, but you could hear it. You could hear shouting that didn't sound like anger. It sounded like people realizing all at once that the rules they'd lived by were gone. Kirk made a little sound, like he'd swallowed wrong. "My sister's in Denver," he said. "She texted me last night, said they shut down a whole block around her building because someone was..." He stopped. He didn't need to finish. I watched the screen, and I felt the cold, not outside, but inside me. The kind of cold you get when your brain does the math and your body reacts before you found the words. I was supposed to report to the Arlington shop that morning. Arlington sits along Interstate 80 between Laramie and Rawlins, an exposed stretch where the highway climbs and rolls near the Medicine Bow Range. The shop there is a winter lifeline. Plows, blowers, sanders, brine tanks, fuel, heated bays, mechanics, radio consoles. When the highway closes, Arlington is one of the places that makes reopening possible. My supervisor had texted at 4:30 in the morning. "All hands, storm staging. Get to Arlington if you can." He did not mention anything else. I stared at the message and I pictured the map in my head, the way I always did. Interstate 80 runs east to west across Wyoming, and in winter the worst sections are the high points. Sherman Summit near Buford, the open stretch near Arlington, Elk Mountain when the wind comes hard. The state keeps shops spaced so crews can hit those areas fast. If there was a storm coming, and also whatever this was, the shop was the best place to be. It had fuel, it had heat, it had heavy equipment, it had radios, it had doors that could close. I looked at Kirk. "Do you have family close?" He shook his head. "Not here." "You got food?" "Some." "You got winter gear?" He nodded, like he wasn't sure. I made a decision so quickly it felt like someone else made it for me. "Come with me." "To where?" "To a snowplow garage." He stared at me like I was joking. "I have access," I said. "Not unlimited, but enough to get in. It's off the highway, fenced, heavy doors. There's fuel and heaters. We can sit tight for a few days and see what's real and what's rumor." He hesitated. "Isn't that government property?" "Everything is going to be government property until it isn't," I said. "And right now, it's the only place I know that's built to stay running when the weather tries to shut the state down." He swallowed. "Okay." The next hour was me moving like I was late for work, because that was how my body understood urgency. I grabbed my cold weather gear, my tool bag out of habit, a duffel with clothes, my old sleeping bag from hunting trips, a box of granola bars and canned soup, a case of bottled water I had left over from a camping trip. I pulled a small propane camp stove out from under the sink and then stopped, because I knew better than to rely on indoor propane in a closed building without proper ventilation. I tossed it back. Heat mattered, but staying awake mattered more. I checked my phone. Calls weren't going through reliably. Texts were delayed. The internet still worked, but it was like trying to drink through a clogged straw. I drove a beat-up pickup with good tires and a full tank because I'd topped off 2 days earlier. That simple, ordinary habit became a gift. Kirk showed up with a backpack, a cooler, and 2 5-gallon water jugs. He also had a cheap baseball bat, which made me want to laugh and then immediately not laugh. We pulled out of Laramie while the sun was still behind the mountains, and the town felt wrong. There were cars parked at odd angles. A couple of people stood outside a gas station arguing with the cashier through the glass. The grocery store parking lot was already packed. On the main road, I saw a police cruiser blocking a side street. Lights on, no siren. The officer stood beside it, scanning, one resting on his belt. As we hit the on-ramp to Interstate 80, I saw the first sign the highway had started to change. A digital message board, one of the tall ones with amber letters, flashed a message I had never seen paired with highway advice. Emergency conditions, limited services, do not stop. Kirk stared at it. "This is real," he said. "Yeah," I said, and I kept driving. The interstate west of Laramie climbs gradually. The land opens up, the sky feels bigger. On a normal day, you see semi-trucks, ranch trucks, the occasional car headed to Rawlins or Rock Springs. That morning, there were fewer trucks than usual and more personal vehicles, most of them going east, away from the mountains, away from wherever they thought the trouble was. We passed a wreck near the median, a sedan with the front end crushed and a state trooper car angled behind it. No one was moving around it. That was when Kirk got quiet. The wind started to build as we approached Buford and Sherman Summit. A couple of flakes hit the windshield, light and dry, and then more. It was not a blizzard yet. It was the start of one. My phone chimed with a message that came through in a burst like the network had caught its breath. From Dina Alvarez. Shop orders, lockdown, no public, confirm head count, keep radios on. If you're out, get in now. Dina was the Arlington dispatcher, the one who ran the radio console and kept the crews tracked during storms. She had a steady voice that could cut through chaos. If she was saying lockdown, it meant someone higher up had told her to treat this like a security situation, not just a weather event. I texted back. On the way, 2 persons, me plus 1. No response came, but I saw the message mark as delivered. We took the Arlington exit just as the snow started sticking. Arlington itself is not a town the way most people think of towns. It's more a cluster of structures and services built around the highway, a truck stop, a few buildings, the Department of Transportation maintenance facility, wind and open space. It exists because the highway needs it. The shop sat back from the road behind a chain-link fence topped with wire. Not fancy, just functional. There was a wide yard for vehicles, a fuel island, a heated shop building with multiple bays, an office section, and storage for sand and salt. Plow trucks sat lined up like a row of big, patient animals. Orange paint, reflective stripes, blades angled down, spreaders in back. We rolled up to the gate. Normally, during winter operations, that gate is either open or controlled by a keypad for employees. That morning, it was closed, and I felt my chest tighten. Then, I saw a pickup inside the fence moving toward us. The driver got out and walked to the gate. It was Roy Blanchard, the lead mechanic. Late 50s, broad shoulders, white mustache. He moved like someone who'd spent his life around heavy equipment and had no time for nonsense. He wore insulated coveralls and a knit cap pulled low. He looked at me through the fence. "Mason?" "Roy," I said. I tried to keep my voice steady. "We got in?" Roy glanced at Kirk and then back at me. "You alone?" "Me plus him," I said. "Kirk, he's got supplies." Roy held my gaze for a second, then nodded once, sharp. "Open it." He punched a code and the gate motor whined. The metal gate slid aside. We drove in. As soon as we were through, Roy closed it behind us. He didn't wait for it to finish. He waved me toward the office building. "Park near Bay 2, he said, "then inside." I did exactly what he said. The inside of the shop hit me with familiar smells. Diesel, hydraulic fluid, rubber, old coffee, the metallic tang of tools. The heat was on, that warm, dry blast that makes your face feel like it's thawing. The overhead lights were bright and steady, and for a second it was almost normal. Almost. Dina stood at the radio console in the small office area. She wore a reflective vest over a hoodie, her dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail. Her eyes flicked to me and then to Kirk. Her face didn't change much, but I saw relief under it. "Okay," she said, "you made it." Roy came in behind us. "Who else?" Dina looked down at a clipboard. "We got you, me, Aaron, plus the 2 plow operators who were already on shift overnight. That's 6. Mason makes 7. Plus, him makes 8. Kirk shifted like he didn't like being counted. Aaron McKinnon stepped out from the break room holding a mug. Aaron was in his early 40s, one of the operators who could drive anything with wheels and some things without. He looked tired, eyes red, like he hadn't slept. He nodded at me. "You're late," he said, and he tried to smile like it was just a normal storm day. "Traffic," I said. Aaron's smile faded fast. "Yeah." One of the overnight operators, a young guy named Nate, stood near the shop door with his phone held up like he was trying to pull signal out of the air by force. The other, a woman named Jill, was checking the big roll-up bay doors, making sure they were fully down. Dina pointed at the bench by the wall. "Drop your stuff," she said. "Then we're doing a head count, doors, and fuel inventory." Roy grunted approval. "And we're shutting off anything we don't need. If the grid goes weird, I don't want a bunch of loads pulling at once." I set my duffel down and felt that strange shift in my head where my world shrank to what was within these walls. I had gotten to a place that could keep me alive in winter. Now, I needed to keep it running. Dina turned a radio knob and the speaker crackled. "District 1 Arlington Shop, this is Arlington Base," she said into the microphone. Her voice was calm, steady. "Any units, respond with status." The response came in pieces. A plow unit near Laramie, another near Rollins, the dispatcher in Laramie office, then static, then a voice that made my skin prickle. It was a trooper. Wyoming Highway Patrol. His voice was clipped, controlled, but underneath it you could hear strain. Arlington Base, this is Unit 9-2. Be advised, we are receiving reports of violent incidents at multiple locations. Unknown cause. Avoid contact with individuals exhibiting aggressive behavior. Maintain secured facilities. Further instructions pending. Dina's eyes flicked to Roy, then to me. She didn't ask what it meant. She already knew. Copy, Unit 9-2, she said. Arlington Base secure. The trooper hesitated, then his voice dropped a fraction. If you have anyone outside, get them in. Highway is becoming unsafe. I repeat, highway is becoming unsafe. Then static. The storm picked up outside like the world decided to add pressure. The wind hit the side of the building and made the metal creak. Snow hissed against the windows. Roy clapped his hands once. Okay, he said. No one goes outside alone. We check fuel, we check heaters, we check the generator. We lock every door that locks. We keep radios on, but we don't burn through phone batteries chasing rumors. Dina nodded. We also need to decide if we're taking anyone else. That hung in the air like smoke. Aaron looked at her. Who would come? Dina gestured toward the highway. Travelers. Truckers. People who see lights and think help. If things are going sideways, they'll come to the one place that looks like it runs. Roy's jaw worked. We're not a shelter. I know, Dina said, but we are a building with heat and fuel and big doors. People will try. Jill came back from the bay doors. Everything's down, she said. Man doors? Roy pointed. We'll bar them. There were steel bars we used to reinforce doors during high wind events and when the shop was unmanned. Simple, heavy brackets and a thick bar that slid across. Not designed for this, but it was something. Kirk stood by my duffel, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. He looked like he wanted to disappear. I'm not going to be a problem, he said quietly. I looked at him. No one said you were. Roy looked him over, the way a mechanic looks at a part they didn't order. What do you do? Oh, operator, Kirk said. Oil field. I drive water trucks sometimes. I can help. Roy grunted again. It was not approval, not disapproval. It was the sound he made when he filed information away. We worked like it was a storm lockdown, because that was the closest thing our brains could grab. Inventory of diesel in the above-ground tank behind the shop. Check the fuel island pumps. Confirm the brine tanks. Confirm the sand and salt piles under cover. Check the shop's natural gas heaters and the thermostat zones. Confirm the boiler. Check the office heating. Check that the emergency generator had fuel and the battery tender was on. When Roy and I went to check the diesel tank, the wind hit us like a slap the moment the man door opened. Snow came in sideways. The yard lights were on, and in their glow, I saw the plow trucks lined up, their blades edged with ice. The fuel tank was a big horizontal cylinder mounted on saddles, painted white with black lettering. It had a level gauge and a fill cap. Roy wiped snow off the gauge window with his glove and squinted. About 3/4, he said. How many gallons? I asked. Roy did not like guessing. Tank's 10,000, 3/4 puts us around 7,500, give or take. That's a lot, I said. Roy's eyes were narrowed against the wind. It's a lot if we stay put. It's not a lot if we start running trucks all day, heating the bays full time, and idling engines because someone gets nervous. He tapped the tank with his gloved knuckles like it could hear him. Fuel is time, he said. We don't waste time. We went back inside fast, shutting the door hard behind us. The warmth hit my face again. The sound of the wind faded to a low roar, muffled by insulation and steel. Dina had the radio scanning multiple channels. She had printed maps out and spread them on the table. The way she worked was reassuring. Organize, label, track. When the world makes no sense, a clipboard becomes a lifeline. By noon, the phones were worse. Text messages arrived late or not at all. We heard fragments on the radio, a hospital in Cheyenne overwhelmed. A crash pileup near Elk Mountain. Reports of aggressive individuals at a rest area. The Trooper channel had more static than speech. Around 1:30 in the afternoon, the power flickered. It was just a flicker. The lights dimmed, the heaters clicked, the radio crackled, then everything stabilized. Roy's face went hard. "Okay," he said. "We're switching to minimal load." "What does that mean?" Kirk asked. Roy looked at him like the question was both fair and inconvenient. "That means we pick what stays on. Office heat stays on but lower. One bay zone stays on enough to keep pipes from freezing. We shut down the big air compressor unless needed. We don't leave every light on like it's a parade." Dina nodded. "And we prep the generator." We had a standby generator outside in a fenced area, big enough to run essential systems. It was not meant to run the entire shop at full power. It was meant to keep the building from becoming a refrigerator and the radios from going silent. Roy and I checked it, fought the wind, confirmed fuel, checked the oil, made sure it would start if we needed it. As the afternoon dragged on, the storm built. The highway out front became a white ribbon. Headlights appeared occasionally, ghostly, moving slow. Some vehicles took the exit and drove toward the truck stop. A couple drove by and kept going. At about 4 in the afternoon, Dina looked up from the radio and said, "We've got someone coming." "How do you know?" Aaron asked. Dina pointed at the security camera monitor. The camera faced the gate. In the blowing snow, a set of headlights had stopped outside. The vehicle was angled awkwardly. Then a figure appeared, stumbling, one hand up against the wind. Jill stood up immediately. "We can't just—" Roy was already moving. "No one opens the gate without backup," he said. "Mason, with me. Aaron, grab the door bar. Jill, you're on the inside door. Dina, keep radio. Nate, watch from the office window. If this goes wrong, we shut it and we don't argue." I followed Roy because he was moving like someone with a plan, and I did not have a better one. We moved into the entry area by the main door. Jill stood by the interior door, hands on the bar mechanism. Aaron stood a few feet behind Roy, a heavy steel pry bar in his hands, not raised, just ready. It wasn't dramatic, it was practical. Roy cracked the exterior door just enough to see and to be heard. Wind shoved snow into the gap. "Hey!" Roy shouted. "Stop there. Identify yourself." The figure staggered closer, hands visible. A man, maybe late 30s, wearing a truck stop jacket and a knit cap. His face was red with cold. He looked exhausted. "My name's Luis," he shouted. "I'm a diesel tech. I was at the truck stop. People went crazy. I ran." Roy's eyes flicked to me like he was checking my read. The guy's movements were desperate but not aggressive. He kept his hands up. "You hurt?" Roy yelled. Luis shook his head hard. "No, I'm just cold. Please, I saw the lights." Roy glanced back at Jill. "Open," he said. Jill popped the interior door bar loose. Roy opened the outer door wider and Luis stumbled in, shaking snow off like a dog. Roy slammed the door behind him and Aaron immediately slid the bar back into place. Luis bent over with his hands on his knees, breathing hard. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you." Roy did not answer right away. He studied Luis's face. "You bit?" he asked bluntly. Luis jerked upright, offended and frightened at once. "No," he said, "and no, I didn't let anyone touch me." Roy nodded. "Okay, shoes off in the entry. We don't track snow, then you sit. Dina's going to ask you questions." Luis looked around. "How many of you?" "Enough," Roy said. Luis sat on the bench, pulling boots off with numb fingers. His socks were damp. Jill tossed him a spare pair from the lost and found bin. He looked like he might cry at the kindness, and that scared me more than anything. When people start crying over socks, the world is not okay. Dina brought Luis into the office and asked him what he saw. He told us in short, choppy sentences. At the truck stop, 2 people had come in screaming that someone was attacking people in the parking lot. Security went outside. Then they came back in and locked the doors. Then someone inside started hitting the glass, trying to get out, yelling that there was someone on the ground. Then a man stumbled in through a side door that had been propped open for deliveries. He was bleeding from his forearm, and he was not asking for help. He was lunging at whoever was closest. Luis said the man moved like he was not fully coordinated, like he was driven more by reflex than thought. People tried to push him back. Someone hit him with a chair. He fell, got back up, kept coming. It wasn't normal, Luis said. It wasn't somebody high. It wasn't rage. It was like he didn't care what happened to him. Did you hear anything official? Dina asked. Luis shook his head. No. The truck stop radio was saying there were road closures and law enforcement delays. Then the station went to static. Phones were spotty, people were arguing about leaving, about staying, and then it got loud and everyone started moving at once. Roy listened without interrupting, his face set. When Luis finished, Roy said, "Okay, that's enough for now." We settled into a pattern that first night. Doors barred, lights reduced, radios on, people rotating between watching the cameras and trying to rest. The building made familiar noises. Heaters cycling, the low hum of the radio, the occasional thump as wind hit the exterior. In the break room, we took stock of food. It wasn't designed to feed 8 people for long. There were vending machines with chips and candy, there was coffee, there were some frozen meals in a freezer that depended on power. There were a couple of cases of bottled water. The rest would be what we had brought. Roy pointed at the vending machine. "We don't smash it," he said, like he could read minds. "We pay into the jar like normal, because if we start acting like everything is over, we'll prove ourselves right." No one argued. That first night I lay on the floor of an office, using my duffel as a pillow. The lights were dimmed. The radio crackled quietly in the next room. I could hear the wind. I thought about my parents in Nebraska. I had tried calling them. No answer. I had tried texting. No response. I told myself it was the network. I told myself they were asleep. I told myself a lot of things. Kirk lay a few feet away, staring at the ceiling. "You think the cold helps?" he asked. I knew what he meant. The infected. The way the trooper had said aggressive individuals like the words were a set of gloves he didn't want to put on. "The cold slows everyone," I said. "It slows engines too." He let out a breath. "That's not an answer." "It's the only honest one I've got," I said. The first week blurred into a series of days measured by fuel gauge readings, radio check-ins that got shorter, and the way the snow built up against the fence until it looked like the world outside had been erased. On day 2, the power went out for good. It didn't shut off with drama. It blinked, came back, blinked again. Then the building fell into a sudden quiet so complete it felt like someone had put their hand over our mouths. The heaters stopped. The overhead lights went dark. The radio went silent. For 2 seconds, nobody moved. Then Roy said, "Generator." He and I ran outside with Aaron behind us, faces wrapped, wind tearing at our jackets. Roy had the keys. He unlocked the generator enclosure and moved like he'd done it 100 times, because he had. He checked the controls, hit the start sequence. The generator coughed, then caught, the engine note rising into a steady roar. The lights inside the office section came back on, fewer than before. The radio console powered. One of the shop heaters kicked on. A smaller zone, enough to keep the pipes from freezing and to keep the air from becoming deadly. We came back inside with snow on our shoulders, breathing hard. Dina was already talking into the radio. "Arlington base on generator power," she said. "Any stations copy, respond." Static. Then, faint and broken, a voice came through. "Laramie dispatch, copy, Arlington, power is—" The voice cut out. Dina tried again. "Laramie dispatch, say again." Nothing. She looked up at us, and her steady face cracked just a little. "That's it," she said quietly. "That's all we're getting." We were alone. On day 3, we heard the first clear call from the Wyoming Highway Patrol since the outage. It came through the trooper channel, which Dina could monitor. The voice was different than Unit 9-2. It was older, rougher. "All units, all stations," the voice said. "This is statewide. If you are receiving, acknowledge." Dina hit transmit. "Arlington base receiving." There was a pause. Then the voice came back. "Arlington base, copy. Maintain secure. Do not allow unknown individuals inside unless necessary for life safety. Multiple facilities compromised. Limited coordination. Focus on self-sustainment. Repeat, focus on self-sustainment." Dina's mouth tightened. "Copy," she said. "Do you have information on active relief operations?" Static. Then the voice again, lower. "Negative. We are operating in fragments. Prioritize winter survival. If you have equipment, keep it. If you have fuel, guard it." The transmission ended. Roy rubbed a hand over his face. "Fragments," he muttered. "That's a nice way to say everything broke." That was the moment the story changed from "wait a few days" to "wait as long as it takes." We held a meeting in the break room because it was warmer there, close to the one active heater zone. Dina put the maps on the table. Roy brought the fuel numbers. I brought the generator runtime estimates. The generator was diesel. It consumed fuel depending on load. With our minimal load plan, we could make it last, but nothing was infinite. Roy tapped the table with a thick finger. "We don't run the big base warm," he said. "We keep one bay above freezing for maintenance. We keep office and break room livable. We shut down everything else." Aaron frowned. "What about the plow trucks?" Roy looked at him. "What about them?" Aaron gestured toward the shop. "If the roads get buried, we might have to plow. If anyone's still coordinating, they might want the interstate open for emergency moves." Dina's eyes flicked to the radio like it might answer for her. "No one's coordinating," she said softly. "Not right now." Jill leaned forward. "If we plow, we burn fuel, and we bring attention. People will follow the tracks to us." Luis, still quiet most of the time, nodded. "I saw how fast people moved when they thought there was help," he said. "They're desperate." Kirk spoke up. "But if we just sit here, we'll run out anyway." I had been turning numbers over in my head since day 1. "Fuel isn't our only clock," I said. "Food is, water is, but cold is the biggest one. If we can keep heat, we buy time. The garage is built for winter. That's why it exists." Roy nodded once at me, like I'd said something he already knew but wanted to hear. "We're not plowing unless we have a reason," he said. "And a reason means an actual call, not hope." Dina exhaled slowly. "Okay," she said. "So our plan is, stay hidden, stay warm, stay quiet." Aaron didn't look happy, but he didn't argue. We settled into routines. Routines kept panic from filling the gaps. Morning started with a radio scan. Dina listened for anything coherent. A dispatch center, a trooper, another Department of Transportation shop. Sometimes she caught a burst of words. Sometimes she caught nothing but static. She wrote down what she heard anyway because information, even broken, could become a pattern. Roy and I did mechanical checks. We walked the line of plow trucks in the yard when the wind allowed, making sure batteries didn't die, checking that block heaters weren't on because we didn't have grid power, checking fuel levels. We did not idle engines for comfort. We did not just start them up, because starting diesel cold repeatedly is a good way to shorten its life and waste fuel. We chose 2 trucks as ready units and left the others parked. Aaron and Jill rotated watch. The shop had cameras, gate, yard, fuel island, front door, bay doors. The feed was grainy, but it was eyes in the storm. Luis proved useful fast. He really was a diesel technician. He understood engines. He understood the way cold thickens oil and the way batteries lose capacity. He and Roy spoke the same language, and that made Roy trust him more than words ever could. Kirk did not have a specific skill like that, but he worked. He cleaned. He organized supplies. He helped carry sandbags when we decided to reinforce the lower edges of the office windows. He did not complain. Sometimes that is a skill. On day 5, we had our first close call. It was late afternoon. The sky was already darkening early, the way it does in winter. The wind was lower, but the cold was sharper. I was in the maintenance bay with Roy and Luis, checking a truck's hydraulic line for a slow leak when the camera monitor in the corner of the bay flickered and Jill's voice came over the handheld radio. "Mason," she said, tight. "Roy, we got movement at the fence." Roy straightened. "How many?" "2, Jill said. "Maybe 3, hard to tell. They're on the north side by the sand pile. They're not walking normal." My stomach went cold. Roy grabbed a handheld radio from his belt. "Everyone in," he said. "No one outside. Lock interior doors. Dina, get eyes." We moved fast, but without sprinting. Sprinting makes noise. Noise carries in cold air. I reached the office area and looked at the camera feed. Snow had thinned for the moment, and the yard lights made the fence line visible. 3 figures stood outside the fence, swaying slightly. They were not wearing proper winter gear. One had no hat. Their movements were slow, like their joints didn't want to cooperate. They pressed against the fence, hands hooking through the chain links. One of them shook the fence weakly. Another stared straight at the building lights, head tilted. Jill stood beside me, her face pale. "They followed something," she whispered. "Or they just wandered," Luis said, his voice low. Dina came in and looked at the monitor. She didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. "Do we have sound out there?" she asked. Roy shook his head. "No, just video." The figures continued to paw at the fence. The wind pushed their clothes against them. They did not seem to notice the cold. Aaron came in holding a flashlight, though there was no reason for it indoors. He looked at the feed and swallowed. "Are those?" "Infected," Roy said, using the word like he had finally accepted it. Kirk hovered in the doorway, eyes wide. "They can't get in, right?" "The fence is chain link," Roy said. "It's not a concrete wall." The figures shook it again, harder this time, like some delayed impulse had reached them. The fence shuddered, but it held. They did not climb. They did not problem solve. They just pressed. And then, as suddenly as they had appeared, they drifted away, pulled by something else, moving into the snow like shadows. We watched them until they disappeared beyond the range of the yard lights. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Jill whispered, "The cold slows them." Roy's eyes stayed on the dark yard. "It slows them," he agreed, "but it doesn't stop them." That night, we added another layer to the lockdown. We moved a plow truck inside the yard, angled it so the blade sat near the gate, not touching it, just close enough that if the gate was pushed, the blade would act like a barrier. We did not create some elaborate trap. We created friction. Friction buys time. We also decided that the office section would become our main living space, and the rest of the shop would be treated like an unheated warehouse. We sealed off doors with plastic sheeting and tape to reduce drafts. We used what we had. The garage had a supply of diesel exhaust fluid for newer trucks, drums of oil, pallets of parts. It also had things that mattered more than parts: insulated gloves, reflective jackets, spare blankets, emergency flares. We decided not to use unless absolutely necessary because light is a beacon. We found a small stock of chemical hand warmers in a cabinet. We treated them like currency. On day 7, Luis approached me while I was checking the generator panel. "You look like you haven't slept," he said. "I sleep," I said, "just not deep." Luis nodded. "Same." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I heard Dina talking to Roy," he said. "They're thinking about moving the fuel keys." The fuel island pump keys were controlled. Normally, they hung in the office. If someone got inside, fuel would be the first thing they'd want. "Good," I said. Luis hesitated. "Do you think people will come?" I looked at the camera feed. Empty yard, swirling snow, the highway beyond invisible. "If they can," I said. "If they're still thinking like people." Luis exhaled. "At the truck stop, some were, some weren't. It's like it spreads and then there's nothing behind the eyes." I didn't answer because if I answered honestly, I would have to say what I feared, that the world was going to fill with bodies that moved but it didn't live, and winter would be the only thing holding them back. Instead, I said, "Help me check the fuel burn rate. If we're going to wait a month, we need to know if we can." So we did. We tracked generator run hours. We estimated consumption. We adjusted loads. We made sure the generator wasn't running more than necessary. We turned off lights aggressively. We used headlamps indoors when we could to reduce load. We rotated charging phones in short bursts, saving batteries for radios. We also did something that felt stupid but mattered. We kept a schedule. Breakfast, midday meal, dinner, watch rotations, maintenance checks. Even if all you ate was canned soup warmed on a small electric hot plate, the act of calling it dinner kept you human. Around day 9, we made contact with another shop. It was faint at first, a voice breaking through static on the Department of Transportation channel. Dina leaned in like she could pull the words out with her posture. "Rollins Base, any stations, copy?" Dina hit transmit immediately. "Arlington Base copies Rollins." A pause. Then the voice again, clearer. "Arlington, thank you. We have limited power, generator. We are secured. We have 8 personnel." Dina's eyes flicked to us. 8 personnel, same as us. A strange symmetry. "This is Arlington," Dina said. "We have 8 personnel, secured. Generator power. We have had contact with infected at fence line. No breach." The Rollins voice, a man, sounded like he was trying not to shake. "Copy. We have had incidents. We turned away. Travelers. We could not risk it." Dina swallowed. "Understood," she said. The Rollins voice hesitated. "Do you have any statewide coordination?" Dina closed her eyes for half a second. "Negative," she said. "Highway Patrol reports fragmented operations. No relief confirmed." Silence. Then the Rollins voice said, "Okay, then we wait." And the line went dead again. After that, Dina wrote "Rollins secure" on the board like it was a promise. She did the same for the one other brief contact we got days later. Cheyenne office unknown. The Cheyenne signal was too broken to confirm anything beyond that someone had once tried to call. The second week brought a different threat, cold inside the building. Even with the generator, we were living in a reduced heat bubble. The shop building was large and heat leaks. The office section stayed tolerable, but the maintenance bay dropped close to freezing, which was fine for storage and equipment, not fine for people. The break room became our central warm zone. We moved sleeping setups closer, stacked blankets, wore layers even indoors. It was a slow grind. The kind of slow grind that makes your mind start playing tricks, whispering that you should just go outside and run down the highway until you find something better. That was when Roy snapped at Aaron. It happened on day 12. Aaron had been restless for days, talking about plowing the interstate just a little to see what was out there. He wasn't wrong that information mattered, but every mile driven was fuel burned, exposure risk, and a track leading back to us. "We can't just sit," Aaron said, pacing the break room. "We're losing our minds in here." Roy looked up from the table where he was cleaning a tool. "Sitting is how you stay alive," he said flatly. Aaron threw up his hands. "Alive for what? For the generator to run out? For us to eat the last can and then freeze?" Dina's eyes sharpened. "Stop," she said. Aaron didn't. "We have plows, we have fuel. We can at least get to Laramie, see if—" Roy stood up so fast his chair scraped. "No," he said, voice hard. "You want to drive into town, into whatever's happening there? You want to open this gate and invite the whole highway to notice us?" Aaron's face flushed. "You're scared," he snapped. Roy stared at him. "Yeah," he said, "I am. Because I've seen storms take people in less than an hour when they thought they were tough. I've seen trucks slide off the road and freeze solid, and now we've got something out there that doesn't feel cold. So, yes, I'm scared. And I'm also the only one in this room thinking about next week instead of next hour." The room went silent. Aaron's shoulders sagged a fraction, as if the fight drained out of him. "I can't do this," he whispered. Dina softened slightly. "You can," she said. "We all can. But we need rules. We need agreement." Jill spoke quietly. "If someone goes out, it's planned," she said. "It's not an argument. It's not a dare. It's a mission with a reason." Luis nodded. "And if we go," he added, "we go in daylight, in pairs, with a return time." Everyone looked at me, because I was the one who had come in with the idea of waiting out the first month. My throat felt tight. "We can't pretend we're not trapped," I said. "But we also can't pretend the road is safe. The shop is designed for winter survival. We use that advantage. We don't throw it away because we're bored." Aaron looked down. He nodded once, barely. After that, we made a compromise. On day 14, if the weather allowed, we would take one plow truck and do a short loop. Down to the truck stop, back, no farther. The goal was not hero work. The goal was information. Is the truck stop occupied? Is the highway blocked? Is there any sign of organized response? We waited for a clear enough window. Wyoming doesn't give you calm often in winter, but sometimes you get a lull where the wind drops and the snow pauses like it's catching its breath. That lull came on day 14 at about 10 in the morning. The sky was still gray, but visibility improved enough that the yard lights weren't swallowed immediately. Roy chose one of the older plow trucks, a heavy tandem axle rig with a front blade, a sander in back. It had a simple diesel engine, fewer electronics to fail. We checked it in the bay, warmed it briefly, watched gauges. Roy looked at me. "You drive," he said. Aaron opened his mouth like he wanted to volunteer, but Roy cut him off with a look. "You'll be backup," Roy said. "Mason's calm. Calm is what we need." I didn't feel calm, but I knew what Roy meant. I could drive in bad weather without making it a drama. That was my job. Jill insisted on coming. Roy didn't like it, but she was steady and she had good eyes. Aaron stayed behind with Dina and Kirk and Luis to hold the building. Before we left, Dina made us repeat the plan like we were kids. "You go to the truck stop," she said. "You do not approach people. You do not open doors for anyone. You observe. You return. If you see anything that makes you think you're being followed, you do not return here directly. You loop, you lose them if possible, or you abandon the truck away from the facility. Understood?" "Understood." We opened the gate just enough to drive out, then closed it immediately behind us. The sound of that gate motor in the quiet felt like a siren. I hated it. The plow truck moved heavy and steady, blade raised, tires crunching over packed snow. We turned onto the frontage road and then toward the truck stop. The truck stop looked wrong from a distance. Usually, even in storms, you see semis lined up, lights, movement. This time, there were trucks parked haphazardly, some angled like they'd been abandoned mid-turn. A couple of cars sat with doors open, snow blowing into the interiors. The fuel canopy lights were off. I slowed, keeping the truck rolling. Jill leaned forward, peering through the windshield. "I don't like this," she said. "Me neither," I said. As we passed the entrance, I saw something that made my hands tighten on the wheel. Near the front doors of the truck stop building, there were dark shapes on the ground under a thin layer of snow. I did not look too hard. I did not need details. The shape of it was enough. Then movement. A figure stepped out from behind a fuel pump, slow, unsteady. Another emerged from the shadow of a parked semi. They turned their heads toward the plow truck as if the engine noise was a dinner bell. Jill's voice went flat. "Keep going." I did not floor it. Flooring it in a heavy truck on snow is how you end up sideways. I kept a steady speed, enough to pull away. The figures started moving toward the road, not fast, but purposeful. More appeared. A small cluster, maybe 6, maybe 8, scattered around the fuel island and near the building. They were dressed like travelers, like truck stop customers, but their posture was wrong. Their arms hung loose, their heads angled oddly. They moved as if balance was optional. They started to follow, stepping into the road behind us, drawn by the sound. I glanced in the mirror. The cluster was spreading out. They were not sprinting. The cold and snow kept them slow, but they were following. "We're leading them," Jill said, her voice tight. "Not if we don't give them a trail to lead," I said. "Hold on." I took the plow truck down the frontage road away from the shop, heading east for a short stretch, then turned onto a service road that looped through a shallow dip in the terrain. The idea was simple. Break line of sight, let the sound fade, let them wander back to the nearest obvious structure. We kept moving, engine notes steady. The figures behind us grew smaller in the mirror. After a minute, then 2, I couldn't see them anymore. I did not relax. I kept driving the loop until we were sure, then I headed back, approaching the shop from a different angle. When the facility came into view, I saw Dina at the office window with binoculars. The gate was closed. The yard was quiet. No movement at the fence line. We rolled up, waited for the gate to open, drove in, and closed it behind us. The moment the gate shut, I felt like I could breathe again. Inside, we told them what we saw. Luis's face went grim. "Truck stop is gone," he said softly. Aaron looked sick. "So, the highway's a trap," he murmured. Dina wrote on the board, "Truck stop compromised. Followers present." Roy listened, then nodded once like he'd expected it. "Okay," he said. "Then we don't go there again." That trip changed the way we saw the world outside. Before, the threat had been abstract, seen on cameras at a distance. Now, we had proof that places people gather had become magnets. The infected were out there in numbers, moving slow in the cold, but still moving. The cold was an ally, but it was not a solution. The third week was when hunger started to become a character in the story. We had been careful, but 8 people burned through supplies. The vending machine was almost empty. The frozen meals were useless because we weren't running the freezer reliably. We had canned food, but not enough variety. The kind of food you're grateful for at first becomes a chore when it's all you eat. Roy rationed like he was born doing it. He didn't make it feel like punishment. He made it feel like a job. "We eat enough to work," he said. "We don't eat because we're anxious." Kirk struggled the most. He was used to eating big meals after long shifts. Now he chewed slowly, staring at his bowl like he could make it fill itself. One afternoon he snapped. It was day 19. We were in the break room. Dina had just finished a radio scan with nothing new. Aaron was silent, staring at the board. Jill was cleaning a pot. Roy and Luis were talking in low voices about generator oil change intervals. Kirk pushed his bowl away and stood up. "This is insane," he said suddenly. "We're sitting here starving while there's food in the truck stop." Everyone froze. Roy looked at him. "There's infected in the truck stop," Roy said, voice even. "So, we go when it's cold," Kirk said, gesturing wildly. "They're slow. You said it. We take a truck, we go in, we grab what we can, we leave. We can do it." Luis shook his head. "It's not that simple." Kirk's eyes were bright. "Why not? Because you're all afraid to do anything." Dina stood up, calm but firm. "Kirk," she said, "sit down." He didn't. "No," he said. "You're acting like waiting is a plan. Waiting isn't a plan. Waiting is dying slowly." The room felt like a pressure chamber. I stood up too, slowly. "Kirk," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I get it. But going into a building full of infected for snacks is not smart. Even if we could move faster, we're not invisible. Sound draws them. One mistake, one slip on ice, one door that sticks, and we're trapped in there with them." Kirk's jaw clenched. "So we just... what? Eat nothing?" Roy spoke, and when he did, everyone listened. "We make a plan that doesn't rely on luck," Roy said. "We don't go into the truck stop building, but we can check vehicles." Aaron looked up. "Vehicles," he repeated. Roy nodded. "There are abandoned cars out there, coolers, grocery bags. People fled in a hurry. If we do it smart, in daylight with a fast in and out, we can scavenge without going into a structure." Dina's eyes narrowed in thought. "And we do it away from the truck stop," she said. "So we're not stepping into the same cluster." Jill nodded. "There were cars on the shoulder near Sherman last storm," she said. "I saw them when we were coming in." Luis added, "And chain-up areas. People stop there, they leave stuff." Kirk looked from face to face, still angry, but the idea gave him something to hold. "Okay," he said, "okay, but we do something." So we did. On day 20, the weather gave us another lull. We took 2 vehicles, a pickup and a plow truck, not to plow, but because it was heavy and could push through drifts if needed. We went in a small convoy, 4 people, me, Jill, Roy, and Kirk. Dina and Aaron stayed behind to hold the facility and monitor radio. Luis stayed too, because he and Roy agreed someone needed to be ready to troubleshoot the generator if it acted up. We headed east toward Sherman Summit, staying alert, moving slow enough to control the vehicles but fast enough not to linger. The landscape was stark. White ground, gray sky, black fence lines, occasional road signs half buried. We found the cars Jill had mentioned. 2 sedans and a sport utility vehicle pulled off into the chain-up area, half drifted in. One door was open. Snow had piled on the seat. We did not approach like we were shopping. We approached like we were working on a hazardous scene. Hands visible, eyes scanning, listening for any sound that wasn't wind. The cars were empty of people. That in itself was not reassuring. It just meant the people weren't there. We found a duffel bag in the sport utility vehicle with snacks, jerky, bottled water. We found a case of sports drinks in one sedan. We found a small cooler with cheese sticks that had frozen solid, which meant they were still safe for now. We found a bag of dog food. We found a box of diapers, which none of us needed, but we took anyway because supplies become valuable even when you can't use them. We also found a winter coat in the back seat of one car, thick and clean. Kirk held it like it was gold. On the way back, we saw two infected on the shoulder, moving slowly along the snowbank like they were following some invisible line. They turned toward the engine noise, but they were far enough away that we didn't need to do anything dramatic. We kept moving. We did not stop. The cold made them slow, but it also made them relentless. They kept walking. Back at the shop, we unloaded what we found and the mood shifted. It wasn't joy, it was relief. The kind of relief that loosened shoulders you didn't realize were tight. Roy nodded at Kirk. "See," he said, "plan, not luck." Kirk nodded back, chastened. "Yeah," he said quietly, "plan." The fourth week was when the waiting turned into something heavier than fear. Uncertainty about whether anyone was still out there running anything official. Up until then, part of us still held on to the idea that relief would come. That eventually, a convoy would roll down the interstate with troopers and National Guard and snowplows and fuel. That radios would crackle with clear instructions. That someone would say, "Here's the plan." But the radio stayed mostly silent. When it spoke in fragments. On day 23, we heard a message that felt like it came from a different world. A calm voice, not local, came through on a frequency Dina rarely used. The voice was distorted, but the words were clear enough. "This is a federal emergency broadcast relay," it said. "If you are receiving, conserve resources. Avoid contact. Seek secure shelter. Do not travel unless necessary. Repeat, do not travel unless necessary." It did not tell us where to go. It did not tell us where help was. It was the voice of someone who couldn't promise anything. Dina stared at the radio speaker after it ended. "That's the closest thing to official I've heard in days," she whispered. Roy's face was tight. "They're telling people to stay put because they can't move resources," he said. Aaron looked up, eyes hollow. "So we're on our own." Nobody contradicted him. That night, I sat alone in the office with the camera monitor glow reflecting off the window. The yard was quiet. Snow drifted in the lights. The plow trucks sat like parked giants. The gate was shut. The world beyond the fence was a white blur. I thought about what it meant to wait out the first month. It sounded like a plan when I said it to Kirk in my apartment. A month was a number you could picture. 30 days, 4 weeks. It sounded like something you could endure. But now, with the generator humming and the food counted and the radio mostly silent, a month felt like a joke. Not because we couldn't survive it, because surviving it didn't mean anything was fixed when it ended. I heard footsteps behind me. Jill stepped into the office holding a mug of coffee. She handed it to me without speaking. I took it. "Thanks," I said. She sat in the chair beside me and looked at the monitor. "You think they're still out there?" she asked after a while. "Who?" I said, though I knew. "People who know what they're doing," she said. "Coordinators, dispatch, anyone." I watched the snow drift. "I think some are," I said carefully, "but I think they're scattered. And I think winter makes everything harder." Jill nodded. "Winter always wins," she said. "It always tries," I said. She looked at me. "You regret coming here?" I thought about my apartment. The thin walls, the single heater, the city with sirens and crowds. I pictured the shop's steel doors, the fuel tank, the generator. The plow trucks. No, I said. This place was built for bad days. We just didn't know how bad. On day 26, we had our second breach attempt, and it came from the direction I least expected. Not the infected, but people. It started with a sound that didn't belong in the storm. A distant engine, laboring. Dina heard it first because she was always listening. She looked up from the radio console, her eyes sharp. "Vehicle," she said. Roy was already moving toward the camera monitor. The gate camera showed headlights approaching, bouncing in the snow. A pickup truck, moving too fast for conditions, fishtailing slightly. It stopped hard at the gate, bumper nearly touching the chain link. 3 figures got out, bundled in heavy coats. One waved their arms toward the camera, toward the building, toward the lights. Kirk stood behind me, breathing fast. "People," he whispered. Dina grabbed the handheld radio. "No one opens," she said, her voice firm. The figures at the gate started yelling. We couldn't hear the words, but we saw the urgency in their movements. One banged on the gate with a fist. Another pointed at the truck as if something inside was wrong. Roy watched, face hard. "Could be a trick," he said. Jill looked at Dina. "Or they're freezing." Luis, standing behind Roy, swallowed. "We can't ignore them," he said quietly. Roy looked at him. "We can," Roy said. "And we might have to." One of the figures at the gate suddenly stumbled backward as if shoved. The other 2 grabbed them. The stumbling figure sagged, then jerked. The way they moved made my stomach drop. It was the wrong kind of movement, too sharp, too uncoordinated, like a puppet yanked by a string. The other 2 reacted fast, stepping away, hands up, panic clear, even through the camera's grain. And then the stumbling figure lunged. It was sudden enough that even through a silent video feed I felt the shock. One of the other figures fell. The third tried to pull them away, failed, stumbled, ran toward the truck. The infected figure clung to the one on the ground, head bent close. The motion was frantic. The other figure in the truck slammed the door, engine revving. Dina covered her mouth with her hand. Roy's voice was low. "That's why," he said. The truck peeled away from the gate, spinning slightly, then catching traction and vanishing into the snow. The infected figure at the gate turned toward the fence, toward the building lights. The other figure on the ground did not move. My throat tightened. I looked at Dina. She looked like she wanted to run outside anyway, like instinct was fighting reality. Roy put a hand on her shoulder, firm. "No," he said. "If we open that gate, we become the next scene." Dina's eyes were wet. She nodded once, forcing herself to breathe. We watched the infected figure paw at the gate, hands slipping on the chain links, shoulders hunched against wind it didn't seem to feel. It shook the gate, harder than the ones before. The metal rattled. Roy's jaw clenched. "Blade truck," he said. He and I moved to the bay door window that faced the yard. The plow truck we had positioned near the gate was inside the fence. Roy signaled Aaron, who was watching too. Aaron ran to the truck, climbed in, started it. The engine note rose, steady. He eased it forward, blade lowered just enough to contact the snow, pushing. He did not ram the gate. He moved the blade close, creating a barrier between the infected figure and the gate's weakest section. The infected figure pressed against the blade, hands scraping metal, trying to find purchase. The truck's presence seemed to confuse it. It backed away, then lunged again, then backed away again. The cold and the wind and the machine created a strange standoff. Aaron kept the truck still, engine idling. He did not honk. He did not rev. He just held position, a quiet wall. After several minutes, the infected figure drifted away, pulled by something else, or just by the absence of progress. It moved toward the highway slow, disappearing into the snow. We did not celebrate. We did not speak much. That night, Dina wrote on the board, "Travelers compromised at gate. Do not open." Kirk sat on the bench and stared at his hands. "We could have saved them," he whispered. Roy's voice was tired but firm. "We might have saved one," he said, "and lost all 8. Then no one saved." Kirk swallowed hard. He nodded like he hated the truth but couldn't fight it. Day 28 brought a mechanical problem because, of course, it did. Machines don't care about your crisis. They break when they break. The generator started surging, not failing but fluctuating. Lights dimming slightly, then brightening, radio crackling. Roy heard it instantly. He and Luis moved like a unit, checking the panel, checking the load. "It's hunting," Luis said, listening to the engine note. "Governor might be sticky." Roy nodded. "Or fuel filter clogging. Cold weather can cause diesel issues if water in the fuel starts to freeze or if the filter loads up. We had treated the bulk tank for winter, but nothing is perfect, and the generator had been running for days. Filters do what filters do." Roy shut down non-essential loads immediately. Office lights went to minimum. The hot plate went off. Phone charging stopped. "We shut it down for a minute, swap filters, restart," Roy said. Dina's face went pale. "If it doesn't restart—" Roy cut her off. "It will," he said, and his voice was steel. "We don't do if today." We went outside into the wind and opened the generator enclosure. The engine heat hit our faces, a blast of warmth that felt wrong outdoors. Roy moved fast, hands steady despite cold. Luis handed him the spare filter. I held a flashlight, shielding it from wind. We swapped the fuel filter, bled the line carefully, then Roy hit the start. The generator coughed, then caught, then settled into a steady roar that made my shoulders sag in relief. The lights inside stabilized. Roy didn't smile. He just shut the enclosure and said, "Okay, that's your warning. Nothing runs forever." That night, we adjusted again. Lower heat, less light, more blankets, more layers. If the generator failed, we needed to survive the hours it would take to fix it. And in Wyoming winter, hours can be enough to change your situation permanently. By day 30, the first month was ending, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a milestone you hit while still running. A marker on a road that kept disappearing ahead. We marked it anyway because humans need markers. Dina made a small pot of coffee, using grounds we had been rationing. Jill warmed a can of stew. Roy allowed himself one candy bar from the vending machine's last row. It felt ridiculous and sacred at the same time. We sat in the break room, 8 people who had become something like a crew, something like a family. Not because we were close, but because we had survived the same cold, the same silence, the same fear. Aaron looked around the table. 1 month, he said quietly. Kirk nodded. "We did it," he whispered, like he was afraid to jinx it. Luis exhaled. "We did," he agreed. Roy set his mug down and looked at each of us. His eyes were tired, but clear. "That's the first month," he said. "It doesn't mean the second month is easier, but it means we can do hard things and keep our heads." Dina looked at the radio console through the doorway. "We still haven't heard a real plan," she said. Roy nodded. "Then we make one," he said. Jill leaned forward. "What does that look like?" Roy's gaze went to me, then to the maps. "It looks like this," he said. "We hold the shop as long as we can. We keep the generator running, we keep the trucks ready, and when the weather gives us a window, we expand our information. Not because we're chasing hope, but because we need facts." Aaron frowned. "You mean scouting?" "I mean controlled movement," Roy corrected. We don't become wanderers. We become a point of stability. That's what this place is. Dina's voice was soft. What if someone calls for help? Roy's face didn't harden the way it had before. It softened, just a little, and that scared me because it meant that the weight was getting to him too. Then we decide case by case, he said. We don't open the gate because our hearts pull us. We open it if we can do it without losing everything. Kirk stared at his mug. People are going to die out there, he whispered. Roy nodded once, slow. Yeah, he said, and people are going to live. Our job is to be on the living side without turning into monsters ourselves. For a long moment, the only sound was the generator hum in the distant wind. Then the radio crackled. Dina's head snapped up. She stood so fast her chair scraped. She moved into the office and leaned over the console, hand on the volume knob. A voice came through, faint but clear enough to make every hair on my arms lift. Any Department of Transportation facilities receiving, the voice said. This is Wyoming Highway Patrol Relay. We are attempting coordination for limited corridor clearance and supply movement. If you are secure and have equipment, respond with status and capability. Dina's eyes widened. She looked at us like she couldn't believe it. Roy was already standing. Answer, he said. Dina hit transmit, voice steady despite the tremor I could hear under it. Arlington Maintenance Facility receiving, she said. 8 personnel, generator power secure, 2 plow trucks ready, fuel approximately 7,500 gallons remaining in bulk storage. Capability limited by security risk. Await instructions. There was static, then the relay voice again. Arlington copy, it said. Stand by. We will attempt to establish a schedule for corridor movements when weather allows. Maintain secure. Do not engage unknown individuals. Further contact to follow. The transmission faded. Dina stood frozen for a second, then let out a breath like she'd been holding it for a month. Aaron's face shifted, something like hope trying to return. They're still out there, he whispered. Roy didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just nodded once, the way he always did when the world gave him a fact. Yeah, he said. They are. He looked at the board where Dina had written all our notes. Then he looked at the door, at the wind beyond it, at the fence and the gate and the plow trucks waiting in the yard. Okay, he said, voice low but steady. Then we keep doing what we've been doing. We hold, we stay warm, we stay quiet. And when they call again, we're ready. I sat back down slowly, feeling the weight of the month in my bones. 30 days of cold, silence, rationing, watching, deciding not to open doors. 30 days of learning what mattered: fuel, heat, routine, discipline, and the ability to say no even when your instincts screamed yes. Outside, winter kept moving across the plains, indifferent as ever. Inside, in a highway snowplow garage off Interstate 80 near Arlington, 8 people listened to the generator hum and the radio crackle, and for the first time in weeks we didn't feel completely cut off. We weren't safe, not truly. We weren't rescued, not yet. But we were still here, and we had made it through the first month. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.